The following is for information purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. All opinions and views expressed by the contributors to this podcast are in a personal capacity only. They do not represent the views of Progressive Equity Research or any other organisation mentioned in this podcast.
Hello there, and welcome to Talk Tech from Progressive with George O'Connor and myself, Ian Robertson, the podcast where we talk about the UK small and mid-cap listed tech market and try and bring some facts and understanding to bear. So, George, what's been happening in your world this week?
Well, hey there, Ian. Great to chat. Really loving your Cloud Native blog, which you've just published. As I went through it, I was sort of struck by three things. So firstly, you didn't call out the bad boys in this market, sort of those desktop heroes who are happy to perpetuate this false narrative of the progression to cloud. Now, if we look at sites like Comparably, we can see NPS scores here, which will call out poor practice. Now, secondly, you refuse to be an apologist for the industry. Ian, you've put on your fund manager hat again. Take it off. I appreciate you are happy to do the software industry a favor by skipping over that transition ASP, application service provision phase. And I appreciate your criticism, which I expect to hear, George, that was mostly about a budgetary offer in a recessionary time. But for me, it gave the industry the gumption to think, hang on, this is easy. Let's see what we can wrap into that legacy wrapper, or Ian, in fairness, your words, the monolithic dollop, and let's use that and get away with it until we can work through the technical challenges of moving to cloud native. My third point is, where do you see this going? You've opened the kimono on a whole number of issues around consumption, the API economy, pricing models, IaaS, SaaS, PaaS, da-da-da-da-da. Where do you see this as being headed? Ian, I'd really love your thoughts.
Yes, thank you for that. First of all, to a certain extent, it's a little bit about what are software companies delivering and who are they delivering it for. At the end of the day, their job is to deliver it to the end user and to make sure that certain functions get done, accounting systems work, websites work, credit card payments go through. Do we really care that much, actually, what the software is? Does the average zero user have an appreciation of quite how structured the software is that they're using? In fact, how native is the zero software anyway? Because this is something that has only evolved in the last few years, and it's become stricter in its definition over the last few years as well. I mean, when we saw the whole AWS come through, it was, it's cloud native. It's on the cloud. It must be cloud native. But that wasn't really making it for the cloud. It was sort of bodging it.
Correct. It was about a technical architecture. Correct.
And we didn't have to change it. Why rebuild it if we don't want to? I can understand that you want it to be faster, better, slicker. But for the most part, who needs it to be faster, slicker, better? If I am working in a public authority and I'm looking at planning permissions software and looking at what's coming in, going out, in terms of inside council head office, I don't really care what it looks like. As long as it goes in and out, I don't really mind. If it goes outside, actually, I'd have to say that there maybe is something to think about there. And actually, when we look at what else is going on in the world, it's the way in which the surface is where the interesting thing, that's where the engagement is. That's how we end up with the growths of the TPX impacts of the world, the Kainos of this world, just making engagement work. And that kind of level, that's not really being done at the monolithic level. That's cloud native stuff. But I do think we have to appreciate that spending money endlessly to make everything cloud native is a waste of time. I mean, when did COBOL die? And the answer is not yet.
And possibly never will. But we've celebrated a significant milestone in the world of COBOL. I'm going to say that was the 60th birthday around COBOL. The programmers, the engineers, the sysadmins, the average age now is 55, and they're struggling to get people interested in it. Can I bring you back,
Bring me back.
And say the issue here is one of planned obsolescence. And what you're fighting back with is the utility cycle that this software has. So, referring back to your local authority, they can say, well, we can keep this installed for a 10-year period. It's stable. It does what we want. And our business is not changing dramatically. That doesn't help the industry to sell more stuff. And it's an industry that is built on selling more stuff. So that gets me to the third point, as I now bring me back on topic. Where do you see this going?
Well, we don't have to stop innovating. We don't have to stop adding new layers and functionalities on. There's always a bit more you can add. There's always a change you can make. We just haven't been told by the customer what it is yet. And when we think about how we make these changes, a lot of the time, they're actually going to be made at a relatively high level within the coding. You're not always going to be going back and having to change your monolithic block because you've already broken it up to a certain extent. They're not bricks yet, but they're blocks, as it were.
And in fact, what you're doing is you're talking us through the argument for compostable applications, which a whole number of people are talking about in the industry as a way to get over the sort of API spaghetti junction. So you will find fans. I just think, though, technical debt is still a huge issue in the industry, and it's always best solved by addressing it sooner rather than letting it fester in there. And what we don't know is then what kind of problems will that surface. Now, you're going to slap me back and say, George, when was the last time a lack of documentation on somebody's COBOL program resulted in a cash point machine failing to give me the tenner in order that I could get the taxi home? But then these are quite stable systems, so there's no need for them to change. But then if you talk into that industry, everything about that industry is how those systems are morphing, but they still have that legacy wrapper that's sitting in there. And just think over time, that has to create issues and challenges for the industry.
Yes, I think at some point in time, there are going to be crunch points. Going back to the millennium, that was, we're all going to have a crunch time. Never happened. We keep avoiding these things. It's amazing, really, that the world has continued like this, given the way in which people work and develop and interact. But I can't see any particular crunch point or event that's going to trigger it.
Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And we both appreciate we're on the early stages of a new technology transition around Gen AI. But in time, I do believe this will start to change. We're only at the foothills of this. Otherwise, Ian, what else have you been working on?
What else have I been working on? Lots of technical stuff that will come out hopefully over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
This morning, I've been listening to Constellation Software and trying to get my head around that. I will probably come back to it in due course and try and put something together to help people understand this giant of Canadian software company that is just hundreds of software companies all put together, all in the vertical market spaces, plain and simple businesses. 3 hours of AGM call where they went through absolutely everything that you could possibly imagine. But the words premise, that was mentioned once. SaaS, don't say that. The idea of talking about cloud and cloud native and how you write APIs, they're talking about things as a business. And it was very refreshing, shall I say.
Very good. I've been worked off my little fingers this week. We started out, we had the video gamer Tiny Build. We had a trading update ahead of their AGM tomorrow. Really nice positives seeping out of Tiny Build on this general cautious optimism theme. Please no one get carried away. But it seems to be trending in the right way. For ourselves, I've been monitoring Steam. Yeah, that's one of the platforms where the video gamers go. They put their wish list together. The influencers are on there. They see what's coming down the slate in terms of new titles. And looking at Tiny Build there, their followers has increased by 18% in the past 3 weeks. The great unknown is the conversion of those followers into buyers. But there must be some link in there. And what we're trying to do is really sort of de-risk the earnings profile of the companies. Secondly, Made Tech made an FY trading update. Company has been hit by exposure to UK public sector, but what they're saying is that the year ended in line. That was great. We did a piece last week looking at Accenture's Q3, similar time and materials business. However, massive. Accenture has 750K FTEs. They were reporting to the 30th of April period. Two standouts for me in there. First off, the guys and gals are doing 2 billion of AI bookings. So it's coming up to 10% of group bookings. So the numbers are starting to be significant in terms of AI revenue coming through. Accenture is classic large company, but Accenture is classic large company doing sort of transformation kind of ideas. Now, the shape of the deals suggests that we're still at the experimentation stage. So what you're not seeing is big rollouts there yet. But yes, this is a widespread movement across large corporates. No specific vertical market story in there. Seems to be pretty much across the board. But what they're saying is that this is leading larger scale business transformation deals. For me, a nice positive that some of the narrative in this space is leading into contracts. And in fairness, there's more winners than NVIDIA in this market. The other thing looking at Accenture was that the KPIs are starting to budge better. Now, we've talked about this in the past, and I did mention that Accenture is up to 750K, but the underlying point there is that the industry is hiring again. So that's a real positive for me. And then finally, on my plate, last night we attended the Enterprise Awards. So this celebrates smaller tech companies, private companies. It was one of the unicorns from the UK that stole the limelight, a company called Quantexa, a data analytics firm, doing a lot in financial services and KYC, but a positive in terms of that customer group, because a number of them will be in capital markets.
Is that AI related in any way?
As you well know, everything is AI related. They bought a Dublin-based AI and NPL, natural language processing business back end of last year. But the acronym I think I'd throw at you is ARR rather than AI. But they're now doing ARR of 100 million. The CEO, Vishal Mariah, super nice guy, great advocate and poster boy for the UK tech sector. His background is with Detica. So they've got 760 FTEs in Quantexa, and I reckon a big chunk of those group is going to be ex-Detica. Great to see that franchise live on.
Yes.
So that's a wrap in terms of my week. Your piece on Constellation, are you going to blog that for next week?
I'm going to try and block something over the next week and a half.
A name that no one really understands.
I just looked in and just thought, this is huge.
Yes.
And the way in which this meeting is being run, it was just sort of surreal, really. You had 3 investor relations guys running the AGM and all the divisional heads. I mean, they are big software companies in their own right, these things. And difficult questions were being asked of these guys. And Mark Leonard was answering some of the questions and then batting them away to the appropriate, most sensitive, most uncomfortable divisional exec. He was standing there in a T-shirt, and all the other guys were all sitting down in a very relaxed way. It was not slick, just competent, if that makes any sense.
But very revealing.
Yeah. We don't need to go back and rewrite all the software if it's doing a decent enough job.
Ian, have you just come full circle?
I have just come full circle. Well, that was sort of why the Constellation was in there. But that also brings us back into AI. A lot of vertical market software is just taking stuff in and out of a database, isn't it, really?
Yes.
Which, provided you have got your process written down, the AI, that's going to write it really very quickly and very well. For AI-enabled code-driven code, when we talk about why can't AI write software, and the answer is, well, it certainly can if you've already got an example of the code software it's got to write. Therefore, the actual conclusion is that it is going to go to the cloud native because it's going to be cloud native written by AI.
Ian, on that bombshell, you've been an absolute rock star. Have a great week ahead. We look forward to chatting.
Brought to you by Progressive Equity.